I love Zootopia. When it first came out way back in 2016, I thought it was a revelation of a movie. I'd well and truly fallen off the bandwagon in watching animated films. I'd been in my angsty teenage art house movie phase, and thought that kiddie films were well and truly beneath me, and I think this is one that well and truly restored my love for the medium, alongside How to Train Your Dragon. It was just so fun and so uplifting that I was instantly hooked. Of course, in the years since, I've seen a lot of naysayers and doubters along the way. People that try to tell me that Zootopia is overrated or bad or whatever. That it shouldn't be featured at the theme parks and doesn't need a sequel, or that it isn't even that popular. Sure, buddy, let's ignore the fact that the movie grossed over $1 billion at the box office, was hugely popular with immense acclaim from both critics and audiences, sold a bunch of merch, and won an Oscar over the likes of Moana, which was also a massively popular film that year. If Moana, which by every metric was an overwhelming success for the studio, returned by popular demand and was a box office smash hit, why would Zootopia, which by every single metric was more successful than Moana 1, not have that same opportunity? Ugh, I get salty about it even now. But this did mean that for a very long time, I was completely unwilling to dig a little deeper into the film to point out some of its shortcomings overall. I'd get in my feelings a little bit about everything. Typical fanboy behaviour, to tell you the truth, and I'll own up to that. Eventually though, time passed, and I was able to take a look at some of the deeper critiques, but also make a few tongue-in-cheek ones of my own. In terms of legitimate criticisms of the film, I've made a video discussing the whole racism/xenophobia analogue within the story, and how it kind of falls apart when you poke at it with a stick a little bit. Then I made a more goofy video discussing how the actual city of Zootopia makes no real sense when you think about it in depth. I know, it's a world of talking animals, but they clearly try to ground it in some sort of reality with real-world analogues. So even as a joke, I feel like it's fair game. Really, that's what I'm interested in doing again today. Before we go any further with this though, I'm going to emphasize this. This is a joke video. Yes, I'm just having some fun with it. You may be wondering, well, surely you don't have to tell us that it's a joke. That'd be obvious, right? Wrong! Trust me, as somebody who has to read the comments on some of these things, many do not in fact know when something is just for fun or is just a joke. With all that cleared up, I'd like to continue down the path we started walking in our last Zootopia video, and needlessly pick apart the world building and lore that makes the franchise tick. Last time, we marveled at the complete impossibility of an open-air city that somehow creates a fully functional ice zone simply with a big cold air fan, whilst using the heat generated from said fan to create a scorching hot desert on the other side of the wall. We were also mind-boggled by the rainforest they managed to create and wondered how much water they were using to keep that one moist, or simply how much power they needed to use to keep this city afloat. Just insanity. I think you can see that that's the type of heavy-hitting investigation we like to do here on this channel, and I'd want to continue down that sort of thing today and poke into the weirdest places to try to prove that the world of Zootopia, talking animals aside, makes no real sense at all. Now this time, I want to dive into the super interesting world of population demographics, specifically the issue of overpopulation. To do so, we'll look at the case study of the rabbit population in the wider world of Zootopia. In the real world, I think it's pretty clear that rabbits are very promiscuous little creatures. They love to breed, and they do it often. For reference, the average rabbit litter size is about 5, but can go up to 12, and they gestate for about a month. So mama is pregnant for a month, can give birth to low double-digit babies, and can then get pregnant again pretty quickly afterwards. That's mental. This is why they're such a prevalent species overall, and why even when they're considered a pest species, it's pretty much impossible to fully eradicate them. They can rebuild their population in a couple of months. For instance, in Australia, there's about 200 million rabbits. 200 million! For reference, there's like 27 million humans. And that's just a rough estimate, as realistically, there's no proper way to track this. And that's just Australia. Imagine how many rabbits are across Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Gotta be billions, right? Billions! That's not even taking into account that in areas where there are no rabbits, there are often hares instead, and they have a similar gestation period. And whilst they give birth less frequently, it's still very often by the standards of pretty much every other species. Regardless, as I said, we're talking a population in the billions. Probably vastly more rabbits than there are people in the world. Maybe double, maybe triple, who knows? And this is in our world, a world where they constantly face numerous threats that are culling their population, getting eaten by various different wild animals, getting hunted by humans for food or sport or pest control, getting hit by cars and other environmental hazards, getting diseases, both naturally transmitted and also the ones that humans release into the wild to try to kill them. Brutal, but despite all of these factors, in our real world, rabbits have been completely able to maintain a huge population forever. On top of that, they only live around 9 years if they're not killed by one of the things I just mentioned. They have a big time turnover rate over a short period of time, and thus I think this necessitates the insane breeding schedule they've got going on. Now let's transplant this over to the world of Zootopia, right? In this world, you'd have to assume, they probably don't breed all that much, right? Wrong. They breed a hell of a lot, and all you have to do to prove that is to look at Judy Hopps and her family. When she graduates from her class at the police academy, her parents come to see her to celebrate with her at the ceremony. Here, we have a look at what have to be her siblings. They all seem to be younger than her, and there are no other adult rabbits around. Also, I feel like the implication is that Judy is the oldest of her siblings and the first one to leave home. Now, by my count, there was about 12 of them there, 13 including Judy. Let's be generous and say that this is the full count of the kids in this particular part of the family. In that case, it does seem like the Zootopian world has a lesser birth rate of rabbits than there would be on Earth. Although, it's still obviously very high, as when Judy's waved off by her family on the train, there are vastly more rabbit children than we saw at the ceremony. You'd have to assume that these would also be her family members, right? Okay, so here we can assume that rabbits don't have as many children as they do in our world, but on average, they seem to have more than your standard human family. This means that the population won't grow as quickly. That's true. Remember though, that it's highly likely that since these animals seem to have been anthropomorphized in terms of their characteristics and whatnot, that I very much doubt they still have that classic short lifespan of their original species. Something tells me they'd have a similar lifespan to humans across the board. Maybe I'm wrong in that assumption, but it's what I'd expect. On top of that, I think it's clear they're not going to be facing the same stresses that a wild rabbit would be facing in the real world. They're not going to be getting wiped out by stray cars or diseases with the same frequency. They have technology, so they clearly have some sort of medical infrastructure. On top of that, the whole plot of the film is about how predators no longer eat prey species, and that it's complete ancient history from back when they were just normal animals. This is why the attacks caused by the night owls are supposed to be so scary. It's reverting them to something that hasn't ever been seen before since their civilization formed. On top of that, there are no humans in the world of Zootopia, so there goes predator number one. I'd say that this makes it pretty clear that there's not that many rabbits dying in comparison to what we've seen in real life. Would this not lead to some pretty absurd overpopulation though? Judy's immediate family is massive. It seems to just be her parents, grandparents, cousins, and aunts and uncles there. A family farewell, and it's still huge. I mean, in Bunny Burrow, when Judy leaves at the start of the movie, there are supposedly 81 million beings and counting. Bunny Burrow is presented as a little country town, by the way. 81 million in a country town. I realize that not all of these are going to be rabbits, but it doesn't really matter. Regardless, there's a lot of people in this town. And considering how rapidly the counter is supposedly going up, I think the idea is that this is a mostly rabbit place anyway. And now I'm wondering, should I be walking back my statement from before? Maybe rabbits do have huge numbers of kids and Judy's family's just smaller than most? I don't know. Either way, she's presented as a country girl, and I doubt that this is the only rabbit town in this world, as judging by our real world rabbit population, 81 million truly is nothing. One day, this planet will be covered completely with rabbits, mark my words. And that's not even taking into account all the other different animals that probably breed super fast and don't face the same environmental stresses to keep their numbers in check, that will also be going out of control with numbers. Sooner or later, the world of Zootopia is going to hit its carrying capacity, all because of these bunnies. Yikes. Just for reference, Greater Tokyo is generally considered to be the most populated metropolitan region in the world, and it has like 37 million people. 37. Yet Bunny Burrows comfortably beats it. You'd have to stack the populations of Tokyo, Shanghai, and Delhi all together to equal that. It's madness. They're going to kill their planet. But that's not all I want to talk about. Can we talk about the ludicrous amount of food that would need to be produced to keep this society fed? In our world, humans have very much damaged the planet to provide food and sustenance through agriculture. Obviously, on the one hand, it doesn't seem like this society would need much land for livestock. They only farm and eat vegetables, bugs, and fish. I presume also birds, maybe. Have we seen a bird? Because eggs are pretty handy things, right? Oh well. Regardless, these animals seem to have grown past eating grass and leaves for the most part. They seem to have a more humanized palate. We see that Judy's family actually grows crops, carrots, blueberries, etc. They probably sell them too. The days of wandering the woods eating grass for free are long gone. Can you imagine the environmental strain that the world would be under to possibly feed all of these animals that need this food? That little town is bigger than any human city. And so this actually makes me wonder, how many animals are in the city of Zootopia then? How much farmland would need to be cleared to feed them all? On top of that, what about the fish? The insects that are being used to make bug burgers and whatnot, I kind of get it. I feel like that would make sense. You could feasibly mass produce that with factories and breeding centers for the bugs. They're very small. But what about fish? Without meat, suddenly every carnivore in the world has to pivot to either bugs or fish. Yes, fish farms exist in real life, but even humans are overfishing and wiping out population to make our food ends meet. We're clearly not as populated as this world. What about Zootopia? Think of the ecosystems! We have a city that surely cannot function at all, a world that's rapidly going to become absurdly overpopulated by one species alone, not even taking into account the others, and what will surely be a worldwide food shortage. Yikes. Good luck, Zootopia. Also, before we finish, I just want a side tangent. Do you reckon there's animals in Zootopia's world that advocate for those fad diets like we see in real life? Like paleo or something? It's a kind of harmless thing in our world, but imagine these psychos trying to advocate for a traditional paleo meat diet. Whew! Maybe that could be the plot of the next one. But yeah, beyond that, not much else to say. And so I'll just remind you that these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of my ramblings? Are you on board with me? Maybe not. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.